Hello, NFT land. I'm CreatoriousRex, also known as Brett Kinsella, occasionally part of the NFT world. And we have a great show for you this week. This week in NFT news, that's where we break down some of the biggest stories, many stories sometimes. And I do it every week with my co-host, Skot Leach. Hey, Scott.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing really well. Neither of us are at NFTNYC. We're going to do a little bit on that. Obviously, we're in close contact with what's going on, but we're going to do probably a special show with a couple of people that went with us. But both of us, our schedules didn't line up for this week. So, and you know what? I'm sure it's like no fun. We're probably not meeting any interesting people.
Yeah.
I don't think we missed anything.
Yeah, sour grapes. Yeah, it's probably really boring.
It's probably, yeah, definitely boring. Okay, probably nothing. So we're going to talk about a little bit about NFT NYC. We'll do like more of a special show next week. We've got that planned. And then we're going to talk about some big news. eBay getting into the NFT game. I think you might know something about that company. And we have a new documentary out about one of the most prominent NFT projects that's filled with Nazis. Yes, this is the documentary, so-called. We'll get into that in a little bit. Maybe you know what that project is, and we are going to talk about a few projects. Just do some quick hitters. So that is the show for today. And first up, NFT NYC. There are billboards everywhere. Not as many, though, I think, as last fall. And that probably has something to do with the crypto winter. Maybe people didn't have quite as big of budgets, but there are lots of these 3D billboards with NFTs. And who wouldn't want that if you're just an everyday New Yorker? There's a couple pieces of news. Now, I will say the actual news this week is lower than I would have expected, or I should say less than I would have expected. But maybe, again, maybe everyone did their announcements like a couple weeks ago, and because there's been a lot of announcements over the last month or so. So a lot of people did it leading up to NFT NYC. And there were a few, though, that I thought I would point out. So first of all, Time and the Sandbox are going to do a Times Square Metaverse. Okay. So almost no information other than we're going to do this, waving hands and all these things. And hopefully we'll see it at some point in the future. Many metaverse things we don't see very soon, or not yet, I think is probably the most common refrain. But there's a really interesting angle here. Not that it's the Time Media Organization and Sandbox. Okay, Sandbox is working with everybody. If you want to have a space in NFT land, Decentraland, Sandbox, you usually wind up doing something in one of those, or maybe both. Which interesting is, we talked about this maybe 4 or 5 months ago, maybe 6 months ago, but real life spaces. So as opposed to just creating a metaverse, which is a fantasy place, like if people saw Ready Player One or maybe something like Decentraland or Sandbox, people are looking at IRL spaces and saying, hey, people might want to go into those. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is interesting. When I was at, I know we're going to talk about them later too. I was at eBay on innovation team working on VR. And this was one of the use cases we saw for VR too. Like basically traveling to places before you travel to them as a way to like learn about them. And then when you
training.
Or just seeing curious things. I think it's a neat way. Lots of things are difficult to get a sense of scale in. So VR was really good at that. But I like this, and what I like about it, not it being a representation of physical space is neat, because there's all sorts of implications to that could be really interesting in terms of live experiences being experienced in a metaverse or retail stuff or something like that. But I think we're going to see more of these these metaverse experiences that are smaller environments and really focused around specific sort of call to action. Even if it's just exploring, everyone's building these giant spaces, but I think we're going to start to see a bunch of these one-off spots that help people sort of have specific stories about how they might experience the metaverse. So in that way, I think this is neat.
I mean, so you think about Macy's or Saks Fifth Avenue, some of the big retailers in New York City, maybe just recreating their store, just that one store. So I hadn't really thought about this idea of training, although it's sort of silly because over in VoiceBot, or my AI world, we've been writing about things like using virtual humans for training and metaverse spaces for training. I just hadn't thought about consumers using it to say, oh, visit before you go, then you know where things are. I don't know. Does that take it might take some of the mystery and serendipity out of it, but it certainly takes some of the frustration out of it, I would bet.
Yeah. I think that, and I think it's also, this is an example that just fits. Like we went to VCon, right? So it was in that giant stadium, which was, we talked about the pros and cons of that, but there's a lot of side stages that were sort of like it was like a mystery how to find these things. We
could not find those.
Yeah. But I feel like, a Web3 conference, having a metaverse version of that before you went, that'd be kind of neat. And I could explore it and see. And then you could also have tie-ins of like, oh, hey, look, there's a little hidden Easter egg here. Maybe that will be there when I go to the conference. Like you could sort of seed some, I don't know, just it seems like
I was originally thinking about, like metaverse events or maybe replicating IRL events in the metaverse as well. So like simulcast.
Yeah.
One or the other. I thought those seem like pretty interesting ideas. I hadn't given a lot of thought about real life spaces, but I think you're convincing me that this isn't a bad idea, that there's a market for it. I don't know how big it is, but once you build them, like there's going to be a lot of organizations like the Louvre. They should probably build one, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of organizations that'll make sense for them to build them. And then once they have it, they just have to maintain it, and they could have events there. They could do special art showing. So like a new piece goes up and they could have a reception there, which is super exclusive, but then they could also let people in the metaverse engage in some way and have people in the metaverse to talk to them about it.
Yeah. I think it's neat. But also, like I was saying, this thing of these sort of small curated metaverses instead of the big broad one, I think we're going to see a lot of that, I think, coming up here. And it's going to be a way to it's like trying to explain what the internet was back in the mid 90s, to someone who had never done it. Like, what do I do? Like giving us one specific use case works well.
I like this. I think this, I'm looking to see more of these. Maybe this will be where brand innovation funds grow or go. Say, oh, you can't be at the Pepsi halftime show, but you can in the metaverse.
Yeah.
And then give them like ways to use those Pepsi microphones that nobody seems to want anymore. Okay. Next up. Well, just in short, the AYC, is it about the sessions, like the conference itself? No, it is about the parties. I think about ScoJo, the artist, creative.
Yeah, I was following his Twitter feed. He had a lot of, looks like he was having a good time.
He's seeing everybody. I think I might even have a picture of him in here with folks. But I mean, that's what it's about. And, this feels very much like the early days of the internet. We also had a big crash at the early days of the internet. If people don't remember that, or you're too young to know.
Oh yeah. Yep.
It was actually worse than what we're seeing right now, I think. Well, in some sectors for sure. So in any event, when you went to those conferences, sure, you could go to the sessions, right? And you could learn some things. Just like if you went to like Consumer Electronics Show or something like that, you'd see some of the sessions. But for the most part, it's seeing the people, meeting new people, maybe doing some sort of activation. Like, so some project like Bored Ape had Ape Fest. That's no different than like a brand activation at South by Southwest, frankly. It's just this is what it is. And there's actually a really interesting sideline on this. It's Con. I like to call it Con, C-O-N, like Con, but it's spelled can. In Southern France, that's this week.
Yeah.
And so it's really competing. Actually, there's another show going on this week too, which is kind of a big one. But like normally there's not that much competition at the end of June. And so apparently some marketers were split. They weren't sure which one to go to.
Yeah, I know. Vaynerchuk was in Cannes.
Yeah, his private jet, the Be Friends Express. And then he got back to NYC maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I assume he went to NYC at some point, but I saw pictures or from his feed in France. So
Charmed life. But he's a
I
hustler.
assume he's working. I mean, yeah,
Does he not work? Does he ever not
yeah,
work? And a lot of that is work. I think a lot of people look
yeah,
at it outside and they say, "Oh, that looks like fun," but
yeah. And
you see
these
all the garbage.
these conferences are these NFT conferences are still young, right? So we're in this weird period of time where it's like such a weird, eclectic mix of people, and it has. We talked about this before with VCon. It has like a festival feel to me, like
Yeah.
you're at. Um,
Well,
yeah.
NFT NYC, I think, is absolutely the South by Southwest of the NFT Web3 space right
Hmm.
now. Because you can just see it. I have another picture here. Here, this is ScoJo on the left, and that's Ali Sabet,
Hmm.
great fine artist. I own a couple of his pieces. I really like them. I'm not doing this to pump my bag because I'm not selling it. I keep the stuff. But it's like you just meet all sorts of people when you're there, and I think that's most of the stuff you can learn online. In fact, I was telling someone about this not too long ago. They're like, "Well, I'm going to all these sessions." I said, "Yeah, but like, what about all the activities?" They're like,
Yeah, yeah.
um, like Gabe Weiss had he had this like a paint party, and Fuosh
Hmm.
has done that. I
Yep.
participated in one at VCon.
Yeah.
You go in and they give you materials, you paint with everyone
Yeah.
else, put on overalls and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. Um, and that's where you get to know people. You get to learn
Hmm.
like things that everything, almost anything you're going to see at the show, you can watch and learn on YouTube. It's just not as efficient. Like the show brings it all
Yeah.
together, one right after the other.
Yeah. And the shared experience thing is really hard. You meet a lot of when you're in that environment and you're sharing an experience with someone else, those connections are strong. And
Yes.
that stuff matters. Yeah.
Yeah, like the whole thing is I remember early in my career, someone said, go to the opening keynote.
Hmm.
If like you can skip day two, even the second half of day one, doesn't matter.
Hmm.
But it's like everyone goes to the opening keynote, something else, and then go to a couple of the smaller things so you just have something to chat about. And that's
Yeah.
if you're just trying to get by. But in general, it's like that is the shared experience.
Yeah.
It's like you saw the same thing, you met the same people, you heard the same things, and then you can chat with the people you already know or the people you just met. Uh,
Yep.
so I definitely encourage people to get out to some of these conferences. There's many, many more now, and meet folks.
Yeah.
We're going to do something this summer for artists, ArtCon, NFT Artist Con, and it's going to be virtual because like
Hmm.
people can't go to all these things, and that'll be easier for us to do. I think we're going to do one in the fall, which is going to be actually IRL, but this summer, and it's like we've got like a lobby where people can chat and meet each other and
Hmm.
stuff like that. So we got a couple of those things to try to replicate that, and I think that'll be fun. Um, okay, let's move on. So that's NFT NYC. We'll talk a little bit more about that next week, just to give you
Hmm.
guys the insider scoop on it. Uh, but that's a good teaser. How's that? All right. So the big news of the week is not NFT NYC. The big news of the week, eBay just bought KnownOrigin.
Yeah.
And if you don't know
Wow.
the KnownOrigin logo, it's a triangle and a circle. So
Hmm.
this is what would we call
Yes.
it? Synergy? It's a collab.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when they were doing that new eBay logo. Uh,
Well, it
yeah,
wasn't
this is,
this direction.
go ahead.
It wasn't this direction. It was flat, but we took a little.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so just to let people know, like KnownOrigin is one of the. It's not large. I mean, is it big? It's not big. Nothing's big compared to OpenSea. It's like one of the many other ones, like maybe um, bigger than Super Rare, smaller than Foundation, I believe.
Yeah.
Maybe actually it might be bigger than Foundation now. In any event, they had a lot of NFTs up there. It tended to be more fine art focused,
Hmm.
but there's a little bit of everything. But it tended to be more fine artists, and
Hmm.
eBay just snapped them up. And rumor has it that the reason you know something about the eBay logo is you worked there at one point.
I did. I worked at eBay for a while, actually. Two separate stints. So Yeah, it's I remember having conversations about blockchain back in like 2015 timeframe at eBay.
That's when you
I was
bought into
on
your Bitcoin, right?
I tried from Gox, but
Oh,
yeah.
so many people
Anyhow,
doxed.
story for another time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? You hear about eBay. Everyone knows what eBay is at this point. It's one of those neat stories. I think we've talked about this before, where a lot of old Web 1.0 companies are coming back and getting into Web 3 with some success. Uh, I I don't want to disparage eBay because I have fond memories of that place, but they have a reputation sometimes of buying companies and then sort of ruining them. Not always. Sometimes they keep them going, like StubHub, and the companies are still great and everything's good. It's a good fit. I just hope that eBay can. I'm really curious what they're thinking about on a broader strategy level here, because sometimes when you've been around for a while, you have a certain way of thinking, and you have this machine that
Yeah.
prints money, and you don't really want to touch it or disrupt it.
Yeah. You just have to look at how good a fit it is. And I
Yeah,
think if they let them run it on their own, because they were doing a pretty good job. They weren't
yeah,
doing a perfect job, but they were doing a pretty good job. Uh, that could really help. But
yeah.
I kind of feel like I'm a little worried, like that it's going to turn out similar to something like First Dibs. So
Mm,
I don't mean to disparage First Dibs. It's just like an example of
mhm,
an e-commerce site that happened to have art on it before, now has NFTs as well.
mhm.
And it's interesting because you go there and it's like promoting all it. You can find the NFT stuff, but once you're in there, it's like promoting other stuff. And then they incessantly send you emails like
Yeah,
about
you were
new
telling me about
couches
this.
and
Yeah.
furniture and stuff. So uh, I hope eBay doesn't do that, but I think inevitably there's going to be a bunch of that. And I think one of the nice things so far about Web3, although this isn't going to last forever, is it's been free of a lot of the detritus that we've seen in Web 1
Yeah.
and Web 2.
Yeah, my guess is they'll keep this completely separate based on my knowledge of how they work. I mean, they're existing. It's tough to get anything new in the sort of existing machine, and the way in which the fact that this is a totally different underlying technology means it would be really hard for eBay.com to sell NFTs from it, um, let alone mobile, which is where they do a bulk of their business, and trying to sell NFTs on mobile, as we know, and
Yeah,
with
difficult. Yeah.
yeah, it's challenging. So my guess is they'll keep it separate and maybe glean some learnings from it that they look at in terms of how they might use it on the core site. Um, one of the things we talked about there a long time ago was the notion of using blockchains as a way to sort of immutably authenticate items.
Right.
And there was lots of brainstorming around that, and also just like the history of an item. eBay is really interesting, and a lot of people don't think about this, and it's what's really interesting about NFTs. I can buy a laptop from Amazon, and that's it. They make one-time sale. If I buy it from eBay, that same laptop could have been sold 2 dozen times on eBay.
Right.
Now, Amazon and Walmart have open marketplaces now, so I guess that's not totally true. But eBay, the same item could get sold again and again. So the secondary sale stuff is interesting there, and they know a lot about it. So that could be, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, and let's face it, it's the number one collectibles marketplace in the world.
Exactly. Yes.
So aren't we talking about collectibles?
Yep.
I
Yep.
think it's no. It would have made a lot of sense for them to get if they've got OpenSea. I would have been like, well, yeah, seems to make sense. But OpenSea might be too expensive.
I'm sure. Yeah. This
And
feels like what they do. This size company is kind of where they,
yeah, just
we'll
below
see.
the top.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, I would have rather seen OpenSea and OpenSea. Do I love it? Probably not. Is it super useful? Yes. But
Mhm.
OpenSea is won, by the way. They won the marketplace battle across all blockchains, particularly Ethereum. So just get over it. What you need, like, decentralization, centralization, centralized nodes, those are the things. Most markets need somebody to lead early on. So over time,
Yes.
their market share might erode or it might get larger. History would suggest it's going to get larger, but it's it actually helps growth. And we saw it
Yeah.
last summer, last fall. Everyone knew they could go to OpenSea and they could find stuff. And it just became, and then people became very familiar with it. And then what happened afterwards is a number of the marketplaces started adopting some of the features and some of the UX and some of these other things. You know, thankfully, some of them that are focused on fine art don't. Like the UX is usually quite a bit different. KnownOrigin Foundation, I've done a lot more. Super Rare is different. So, okay, I think I'm going to take away that big collectibles marketplace. I'm skeptical that KnownOrigin is actually the right, but maybe it's the best match for them. So maybe they'll just let 1,000 flowers bloom.
Yeah.
All right. So next, this is a fun one. And actually, a little trip down memory lane. I think at one time you were a filmmaker.
That's right. Yes.
And you were a mockumentary filmmaker, even.
I did make a mockumentary. That's right. Yeah.
Did you make a documentary?
Sort of. I did a little bit of that in school, like short documentaries and things, but nothing I ever really put out there in the world.
Tell me about documentaries, because are documentaries completely based on facts?
Absolutely not. I had this instructor that told me this thing that always stuck with me. Like, there's no way to create an unbiased documentary, because as soon as you point the camera in a direction, you're taking a position. And it's powerful stuff. Yeah.
Well, so here's what I think. Like, I think most people on the street, we'll call them normies. How's that work? They would think, because they're not in the movie biz, they would think that a documentary is like journalism, but better produced. Right?
Yeah.
But the story.
Also, what's journalism? Does that exist anymore?
We could get into that.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to open that can.
No, I think it's fair. It's like, who gives you the facts anymore, right? Everyone's, and part of it, I think, is documentary envy. People want to make an argument. They don't want to just say, "Well, this happened."
Yeah,
people thought this, and those. I mean, what happened is we don't have journalists anymore. We have analysts and advocates and these types of things, but that's okay. But by the way, if anyone wants to look at the history of media in the US, you'll find that the last 30 years where people professed to be independent and fair was actually an anomaly. Before that, like, everyone just assumed they were on one team or another. And that's how the news were, because it was much more like documentary. But we digress.
Yes.
But we talked about this idea. First of all, documentaries don't have to be in fact, they can make things up because the story rules. It's important to have a good, compelling story, or nobody cares about your documentary. And it's like the ends justify the means type of sense.
Yeah. And we saw a whole rise in throughout film history, but in the 90s, it really started with like projects like the Blair Witch, where you're manipulating first person footage to make it appear as though it's real, right? Which is a fantastic storytelling mechanic. And if you're using it in a work of fiction, that's great. If you're using it there's a lot of things that happen to us subconsciously when we see a piece of video or film that we don't even really know are happening. And if you're using that to manipulate people, I don't know. That's
okay.
rough.
Well, but like, what's manipulation in this day and age? Okay, so in any event, like, the NFT space got, I don't know, its first big thing. So, like, hopefully I didn't do too much leading the receiver on this one, if you guys know that term from American football. But you can see in the lower left of this image, it's called the Bored Ape Nazi Club. That is the name of the documentary that was uploaded onto YouTube. Now, this is a fairly substantial documentary. It is an hour and 2 minutes long, although the last like 3 minutes are like a clip from, I think it's Inglourious Bastards or something like that. But right before that, they've got this
infringing copyright all over the place.
Yeah. So this one in particular, they were talking about. Okay, so in any event, there's this thesis that the documentary filmmaker had, that Bored Ape Yacht Club, because of some information, some facts that were shared with him by someone in the community who knows and does his homework, that it is Bored Ape Yacht Club is a racist organization, that the founders are white supremacists, that it is a one big troll on not just the NFT space, but on culture in general in the West. And by the way, that could all be true, even if they're not Nazis. Because what in this space isn't like a troll on something? But in any event, okay, so they've got this thing. So I want to point something out to you. You probably can't see it at the bottom. 850,000 views. This was uploaded 5 days ago, 4.5 days ago. So not bad. They're approaching 1 million views. New account, new channel, everything. Released to coincide with NFTNYC. So smart. I really like these guys. They know what they're doing. And the way I really found out about it is I saw this hashtag burn BAYC trending on Twitter. It did for like a day. Because everyone was finding it. And then all the people who don't like NFTs love this. And so
of course,
this was their call to action. There's 2 calls to action. Everyone knows this one, but I'll tell you the other one in a second. Super secret call to action. I have super secret info on the eBay situation too with KnownOrigin. I'll tell you afterwards.
Okay.
All right. Burn BAYC. They were trying to convince people to send to their wallets. Send or to a burn wallet. They set up a burn wallet, or maybe it's just a regular burn wallet. I can't remember what it was. But it was like, everyone just send your apes to burn wallets. This thing is going down. We've called them out as Nazis. And but let's walk through it a little bit. Let me say. So it starts off, basically it says NFTs, blah, 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 blah. And then it's like, but there's a dark side of NFTs. And you may have seen Bored Ape Yacht Club and the culture and media and everything. And it goes through this whole thing. But have you ever heard of 4chan? And so then they do this whole thing on 4chan. And then they're like, apes, it's racist. And then they show like apes, and they're like supposed to say, oh, this is racist. But then they show some other things. They're like, oh, the picture we had before with them wearing feathers. They're like, oh, that's obviously cultural racism. And they just kept going. Yeah. So that was the first big part of the gotcha, right? Then they got into the people themselves, their names, and particularly their pseudonyms. Because they were outed, so now everyone knows who they are IRL, but they have pseudonyms, and they broke down what each of them meant, and one of them is really obscure, and then even more obscure is the name Yuga Labs, and what does it mean? And they were trying to tie it up in a bow that it all pointed to white supremacy. Okay, but that's not all. It's not just any kind of white supremacy. It's Nazism. And in fact, it's the German World War II flavor, 1930s, 1940s, flavor Nazism. And it was extensive. So amazing. And what they're doing is they basically say the founders of this can't hide behind plausible deniability anymore. They need to fess up, essentially. Them just saying, no, this isn't what you think it is and stuff like that. That won't stand anymore. You've just seen an hour worth of evidence. And they have lots of information, almost none of which actually looks like evidence. To me, but okay. So the Nazi part is interesting. It's an interesting story. They go through all the different things, and they found in numerology, things that point to Nazism. Well, you've got 25,000 tokens. Is that about right? For the different
between mutants and
mutants, apes. No, we got more than that.
No, there's 20,000 mutants, right? And then 10,000 apes and however much land. Yeah,
there's not a full 20,000 mutants yet.
Yeah,
but it's coming. Oh, and then we have other side. Yeah, and they talk about that. Yeah. And then there's this whole thing on the coda. The coda, which is the special being in some of the other side lands, that's also racist. And maybe they're right. We don't do financial advice. We haven't done all this research, but I will say there are some very interesting things that I think are there if you want to see them. So the first thing is around. Actually, I'll say first thing. I'll start with a different thing. Why don't we go up and bring up Ryder Rips? So I think it's Third Eye Truth is the group that's supposed to have done the documentary. And people are like, yeah, the creator is a well-known journalist. Well-known to whom? This is like so many claims in NFT land. Okay. But then he claims that the primary source of a lot of his information was this guy, Ryder Rips. Ryder Rips lists himself on Twitter as creative director, artist, satirist, and funk. Are you familiar with the funks? Copy
I don't believe so.
Project for the CryptoPunk.
Oh.
They
and wait, I don't know if you're building up to this punchline or not, so I don't want to spoil it, but people that did this documentary also did a mint.
Oh yes, and this is
Okay.
this is sort of the,
Okay.
but they're like, oh, but there's no secondary sales on it, and so not only did they do a mint, but they have a marketplace for trading ape tokens. Like this was buried at I think it was 54, 55 minutes in, almost at the end. I was like, wow, this is the longest wait I've ever had for product placement and any type of film. Yeah, so all of a sudden they're like, and Ryder Rips, he's amazing. and by the way, he's going to do, he did funks. So if you don't know who funks are, are they backwards? I think they're just backwards. CryptoPunks. There's like one change to them, and they tried to create their sort of parallel thing. And basically it's a bunch of rug pullers who just lived off a bunch of secondary for years, like or for months. Should have said, getting people to flip in and out of them. So
yeah.
In any event, anyone associated with funks, I'm like, okay, that's fine. I mean, okay, I get it. It's satire. Oh, you're focused on satire. Oh, this is sort of interesting. And you're sort of leading it up to this avalanche of information, all of which is tenuous, none of which points to anything meaningful unless you have an active imagination. And then, oh, by the way, we've got this new place where you can trade your apes. If you don't send them to the burn wallet, here's a place you can buy them. So it's really just hilarious what we do. So I consider this the biggest and best troll so far in NFT land. I was impressed.
Yeah. This stuff I like. It's so hard to tell. Like, I don't know. It's just discouraging. Like it's just all a big elaborate money-making scheme. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it was interesting too, because a bunch of people were doing like reaction videos to it. I'm like, did they watch the whole thing? Like, were they just, I mean, is this where we are as a society where we just watch something and are like, geez, that looks overwhelming? By the way, I have a little bit of experience in, industry analysis, journalism, news analysis. There are different techniques you use. So if you're in business and you really wanted your client to feel like you did a lot of work to be impressed, you come in with this giant binder. Forget about all the digital things. This giant binder. It has to be big. It has to have a lot of pages. It's called the thud factor because you sort of drop it on the table and it's hefty. It makes a lot of noise. And you do it sort of for theatric effect. And they hand out all the binders. And like, why do we have binders? This is a digital project because some people like to take notes. Doesn't matter. You're just trying to make them feel good that their money was well spent.
Sure.
This I would consider to be the dump truck model, which is just like, hey, here's a bunch of stuff. And by the way, because there's a lot of it, There must be something there. And I think they even use it where there's this much smoke, there's fire. Oh no, that was someone who was a commentator. Like one of the smartest, best people in this industry got kind of fooled by it. He's just like, geez, where there's smoke, there's fire. It's not that. I would not be happy to be wrong because I don't want it to be that. Right? I don't, for lots of reasons.
Yeah. Well, the fact is you can't.
Yeah,
right. You can't trust it. As soon as there's financial motivation, and this is the same thing with media too, right? Like, where's the money coming from?
It's monetized on YouTube too. And they just, but I don't even know if they did it for that. Probably did, but, or at least big motivator. But what a great troll. They've got almost 1 million people have watched it. A lot of people believe it.
Yeah, but
I've been in the Bored Ape Discord this week in the private chat, and there's people are worried about it. And it's just look at this guy's. The main source is he's a satirist. It's really good. It's really good satire.
It's hard for me to separate that from the financial motivation. And for some reason, it's hard for me to accept that those things could be.
But listen, they did more work than most NFT projects to put this together. This was not trivial. I mean, you should look at it. They broke down. I mean, maybe they just grabbed other people's stuff, but still putting it all together, there's a lot of segments. They've got this whole thing for one of the ciphers, and they're ciphers and code breaking is very popular in the Bored Ape Yacht Club. It's also popular with Nazis. Remember World War II? It's so funny. I mean, obviously, the script was a little bit different than that, but that's you hear things and you're like, oh, I know what they're saying.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I just have a distaste for this is a problem in the world right now. And the fact that you're contributing to it is just, what the hell?
Yeah. It's some people aren't worried about civilization. And I think a lot of them are on 4chan, but the ones who really are free are the 8chan people, as we all know. I was just talking to somebody. There was a GPT-3. I don't know if people know GPT-3, but basically it scanned the internet. It's GPT style thing. It scans large data stores and say, write me an essay in the style of Winston Churchill, right? Mm-hmm. And it'll do it. It's kind of amazing. Yeah. It's not perfect, but they're really good. The editing isn't that much. Someone just did it based on a couple of different rooms or threads, I guess, in Reddit or a couple of different subreddits. That's the right way to say it. And of course, it went to lowest common denominator, bad stuff immediately.
Yep.
So,
yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to even acknowledge it as good satire because it's so just, even if it's well executed, it feels lazy.
No, why is that lazy? They had an objective. They wanted to sell their tokens.
Yeah, but someone's a Nazi. Call someone a Nazi or a pedophile, and it's done, right?
Yeah, but then what? Come on, what happens when it is? Maybe this is the
time. If that's good. Sure, yeah, absolutely. Expose that. I'm all about that. I'm all for that. But as soon as you say oh, hey, buy these NFTs, there's financial motivation. You can't trust anything you're fucking saying at this point, man. You're
so funny.
Those guys.
We talked about the ruggers a couple of weeks ago, the MFers or MFers, you like to call them. Mm-hmm. All right. So in any event, I think it's you can go watch it. You draw your own conclusion. I'll tell you, it's a bunch of fun.
Yeah.
But
I'm reluctant to even give it my view because I don't know.
Yeah, it's
I shouldn't be talking about it.
Go over 1 million. No, we have to talk about it because it's news, right? That's what we do. We talk about the news. Other people who are not us can suppress information from the public.
No, I mean, I should be careful what I say since I haven't seen the movie. I don't want to me assuming things about them without seeing the content is the same thing as me criticizing them for saying things. You're muted.
Yeah, forget everything I said. Go in with an objective eye, and you can decide whether it's true or not.
Yeah,
I don't know that I'd be persuasive for you anyway, but
I don't.
It's really entertaining, and it's wild at the end.
Yeah,
with all the apes running around and everything. Like
It's funny though how much people like. So the mockumentary you were referencing, I did a zombie community. So it was basically like a social network that was zombie themed, and we tried to make a zombie mockumentary. And we had this fictitious timeline and all these things. And you would think like, oh, well, this is a work of fiction because it's about zombies. And there were people that didn't believe that. They thought that it was about real zombies, and that like
some people thought that, the original Office was an actual place.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. There's a bunch of interesting stuff that happened. These were good stories though. I liked talking about this stuff.
Hit up, you pick anything you want to hit on. We have a couple minutes.
I'm still excited about Average Creatures. I did get to speak to one of the artists in the accelerator that you're doing. That was awesome. I enjoyed that. It's really cool to hear how some of these folks are thinking about NFTs and how they're thinking about using them.
I heard two amazing pitches. Now, I don't know if we have any PFP projects this time. I have to think about that. We might have one. I think last time we had 3 or 4 in the group. It's mostly fine arts, which I think is sort of where we might be heading. Like just on a macro trend standpoint, I think people are starting to look at fine art, and I think the fine artists, the artists who are doing just art, like they're starting to add utility and things like that a little bit more, and they're sort of getting it. But yeah, I've been working with a bunch of them on what their presentations are, giving them feedback. Really, some interesting things. There's one I'll give you a couple examples. So what we're talking about is Niftorian, one of the projects I run, which helps artists in the Web3 space, NFT space, because you know what, they don't really know the space. It's not a gallery show where you just show up and like the gallerists put everything together. It's like a small business. You have to like find the audience, do all the details, help people out, have your own customer support when there's problems, right? And so we recognize that that's the same thing software engineers faced in the tech startup world, and we said, we could just do an accelerator for NFT artists. So the idea that in Web3, the artists are what the software engineers were to Web2. Okay, so that's the setup. We have an 8-week program we go through, and it finishes on demo day. And demo day, they do a 5-minute pitch. The cool thing about it is they haven't released these projects yet. Maybe 2 people have like partial releases, but they haven't really told people publicly what they're doing. So they actually do it in this sort of semi-private thing that we run. It's basically just for community members, people who are part of the Niftorian community. So you get sort of an early look. And I think some of it is just like the ideas. And one of the ideas is that's one of the artists, he was creating something that we were looking at. We're like, geez, this has a lot of commercial appeal, like broad-based common people, like normies are going to like this. Right. And so usually it's about NFTs being precious, right. And being rare and very expensive. Totally the opposite approach. He's trying to get them in as many people's wallets as possible to like build the brand name. He's gonna, like we talked about it, he's like he didn't, this is like, should we do merch? I was like, absolutely, because some people won't buy the NFT because they won't know how to get on Tezos blockchain or something like that. They'll buy the mug because they love it. And there's all these sayings. There's some callback. You can see it. It's called Yellow Shirt Squad. So people want to check that out. Another one about a woman who is went through this journey of self-acceptance, and she basically created a little framework and has been helping people with it. So she's got this NFT project. It's really a lot of passion. There's a photographer who's doing he's doing this really cool things with panoramic view of iPhone, like nice. You'd never expect.
Yeah.
There's so many really cool things that are coming up, but what's really nice is it takes about 2 hours, but you just like one right after another. I think there's going to be 17 or 18 presenters this time around. So it's just like, it's on Zoom. You sit through it. It's not recorded, so you can't watch it afterwards. So since you guys listen to the Niftorian show, just go to Niftorian.com and you can see it actually in my little name tag, Niftorian.com. And just sign up for the you know, just like for contact or something like that, or just like go, actually even better, just go to like, go there, go to the Discord and just say, hey, I would like to attend demo day. And we'll get you in, because it's really fun just to see the different things. And I love that idea that he's using it as mass market as opposed to scarcity.
Yeah, I think we're gonna like, it's starting to see some of these things emerge that are really neat of people taking that approach, right? And I think as we see, as it gets easier to like burning, doing lots of NFTs and burning those to earn something else, or whatever the case is, there's some really cool stuff out there. It's exciting.
Well, you know what else people get who go to demo day? Several of the projects give them NFTs.
Yeah, this is like, you never know what, and this, we've said it a bazillion times. We're super early. Like, you never know who you're going to see at one of these things that could become the next whoever.
The next Murat Pak, next people, the next.
Yeah, and just learning about what folks are doing.
Listen, like, you just hear so many things. And I think one of the things we do with them is we take them through this process, and they hear from speakers. Like, you were one of the speakers. We had people from Object. If you guys know, it's like the biggest marketplace now on the Tezos blockchain. People from the Flow blockchain, you know, Dapper Labs, spoke to them. Art Blocks, you know, like, obviously one of the most famous is most famous generative arts. There's a new one on Tezos, which is pretty great too. What else? We had actually a Hollywood screenwriter come in and talk about story, you know, building a story, you know, behind your project. Another Cat Blocks, Will Fleetwood Ross and the team over at Future Corp put that together. They're doing seasons, right? So every season there's like this new, it's like, this is NFT project as entertainment. They're like, it's seasons. It's like, it's the new Netflix show drop. And they're doing, like, he talked about how you could do that. And so we had a lawyer come in, which we always do. Just like, don't make these mistakes. Wind up in the clink. So in any event, really fun. So if anybody wants to do that, go to our Discord, just go in there and say you want to go to demo day, and we'll give you the link so you can sign up. So yeah, it's like 125 people get to attend the virtual session. So
awesome.
In that case, you're early. Happy hunting.